Alright, it's Tuesday, July 6th, and there is a tropical storm, Elsa, or Hurricane Elsa, heading toward the Tampa area. I want to show you some of the measures that I take living in a flood zone to help secure my property, and just some of the things that happen around town in the midst of this. And thanks for coming by the channel where we talk about living in Tampa. Today is a little bit different. We're talking more about what it's like to have a tropical storm heading your way. But also I am a licensed realtor, so if you ever have any real estate specific questions, my number and email are right there on the screen. Don't hesitate to reach out. All right, so last night at 5:10 p.m. we got an emergency alert. It states, National Weather Service, a storm surge warning is in effect for this area for the danger of life-threatening flooding. This warning is issued up to 36 hours before hazardous conditions begin. Urgently complete efforts to protect life and property. Follow evacuation orders if given for this area to avoid drowning or being cut off from emergency services. So obviously sounds pretty intense, but that's a pretty normal kind of alert when we have things like this. And notice that it said storm surges. This area is a little more prone to surges related to the tides coming in into the bay, and then also into areas like I'm in where we have like bayous in the middle of town. So you see right here on the map, I live about 50 yards from one of these bayous. And in the bayou it's called brackish water. It's a mixture of salt water and fresh water. And usually, even on like a really high tide, like in the spring we have really high tides, this water will come up like into our road. Our house is in a flood zone. We're at about 5 feet elevation, and I've heard that the storm surges are supposed to be between 2 and 4 feet. That means it's getting pretty close to my front door, but only at certain times of the day. So the tide comes up twice a day. Let's just look at the times. So they actually publish the tides also like in the local newspapers, kind of the next week of high tide times. These times are mostly used for fishing, but also in the midst of a storm, something you pay a little close attention to. So it looks like 10:26 a.m. and then right around midnight are kind of the high times for today, and it'll be about the same for the next few days. It'll adjust by just a couple minutes. And what that means is that that's the time that water could be getting close to my door. And then it's going to recede quite a bit after that. Even if it recedes a whole foot, that is helpful for a really low property like mine. So right now I'm at Lowe's to get some sand. The city puts out this like big pile of sand and like bags for you to fill it yourself. But you always just get like rained on and get bit by a ton of mosquitoes, and sand's not that expensive. And I have a good use for it after the storm as well. But I also want to look at some of the other stocks of things. So Lowe's gets rummaged for some things, but even like Walmart, people will be buying water and things like that. And I just kind of want to show you in the midst of an emergency alert what that kind of looks like around here. Here we go. We won't. So I'm not too worried about water like rushing in my house or anything, but this is kind of just enough to keep it from like when it is surging to kind of, if it's splashing up here, to kind of just act as a barrier. Thing is, we're low, and that's just part of it. Some of that is just a risk we're taking. All right, so the sand cost me $22.75 for 5 50-pound bags of play sand, and it's pretty dense stuff. All right, now I'm gonna run by Walmart and see what their water supply is like, and I'm gonna do some Amazon returns, so run by the UPS store and get that done before it starts raining. So Walmart was actually pretty stocked on everything. Obviously, some of the water was clearing out. They were loading more in. They were out of propane. Some people were trying to get propane, and they were just sending them to another Walmart that's a few miles away. So it's not like they're out or anything, but the Walmart here in Tarpon Springs is actually kind of small. So this is currently still just rated as a Tropical Storm Elsa. It won't be rated into a hurricane until the wind reaches 74 miles per hour. And that's just a way to differentiate tropical storms and hurricanes. There's still a big tropical storm, there's still rotation to it, all those kind of things. So they're looking at a storm surge now between like 3 to 5 feet in the Tampa area, and then about 2 to 3 inches of rain and flash flooding in the midst of that as well. So Tampa Airport is closing today at 5 p.m. kind of in anticipation of this storm, and they plan to reopen the next morning after like a storm assessment, after a kind of an assessment of what can operate and what has happened through the night of the storm. Another big concern in the midst of a storm like this is power. So the last storm that we had at our house, like October of last year, October of 2020, we actually lost power for a while, and that's one of the big concerns, is that wind knocks down branches fall on power lines trip, and then they have to come and repair those branches that fell. They have to remove all that before they can turn the power back on. We live in an older part of town, and so where our power lines are on the back of the property and what used to be an alley but then got built up against, so it's kind of crammed back there. So in our area it is kind of a problem whenever there is high wind. So let's think about the problems with a storm. You know, we've got rising water, we've got rainfall, we've got wind, and all those can cause all kinds of problems. But let's start with rising water. Rising water isn't really an issue unless you're really close to the coast, unless you already have tidal areas around you, at least for Tampa area. One of the issues is that once this rain is compounded on top of that, it just creates more water in the bay, more water in the Gulf, and all the kind of water management systems get pretty full. But we're already used to a lot of rain here, so the rain gets managed pretty well, even if that means that it just has good places to pool. And our ground is very sandy, so you know, once it stops raining, it does really start to soak into the ground as well. The next one is wind. My father-in-law swears that not many people have wind damage. He's been here his whole life, he's 70. And the thing with wind damage is, you know, you're often required to have it for insurance, but roofs are secured in a certain way to where they pass wind mitigation standards. So it's not like your roof's gonna fly off. The biggest threat with wind is actually knocking off a tree branch into your house, knocking off a tree branch onto your car, into a window on your house. I did get the sandbags up there in front of my door, as you saw. I'm not that concerned about it. I'll probably stay up late and kind of see how high the water comes up into my yard, see if I need to like even just like have my shop vac ready so I can vacuum up water and then dump it into the backyard. Thing is, it's just got to go somewhere still, so that's kind of the constant problem. But that's kind of my backup plan if water does start to come inside the front door a little bit. But I think the odds are it won't. So my living room floor is 5 feet above sea level. My front door is quite a bit higher than that. It's more about 6 feet above elevation. Above sea level. So, alright, now it's 12:27 and it hasn't really started raining yet. You can see here from some of these like forecast animations that we're just going to kind of catch some of the bands of the storm. But it does seem like they are pretty concerned about flash flooding with the kind of surge and the rain coming at the same time. And actually my mother-in-law and father-in-law, who are typically not concerned about this kind of thing, have been going to the area in the city where you can go fill up your own sandbags and getting a bunch there. And their house is quite a bit higher than mine. I think theirs is at like 11 feet above sea level, where mine is 5 feet above sea level. So maybe I'm a little too confident or arrogant or new. I don't know. We'll see. When a place is new to you, or when a place is just unknown, it's easy to think that the extreme things are the most extreme version that you can imagine or that you've seen. So I remember seeing trailers for movies where there were tidal waves coming into cities and things like that, and I always imagined that is what a hurricane is like, or that is what a tropical storm is like. Of course, news channels show the most intense winds that, you know, are bending these trees and ripping roofs off and things like that. But that is not the typical tropical storm. It would be easy to think of Florida, if you were from somewhere else and had never visited, as just a sunburnt, alligator-ridden tropical storm hammered area, but it's not quite that simple. So they are really kind of striking the fear into us about these storm surges. I'm actually going to go talk to my neighbor who's experienced a lot of these storms and kind of get his take about what he's going to do. Yeah, that's what I'm doing next. The county has these simulations for, like, based on your like flood zone, what a 5-foot surge would be like, or a 7-foot surge would be like. And the surge for my house is like halfway up the wall, exterior walls. I assume these simulations are kind of worst case scenario, but I guess we'll see. Hopefully that's not the case, but I'll keep you updated along the way. So my neighbor is not all that concerned about the storm. Their house is even a little bit lower than mine. He's actually most concerned about his vehicle, so he moved it to a higher place. Just kind of in our neighborhood, there's kind of a high spot that people put their cars during storms. I just went by the sandbag site where you can fill up your sandbags, and there's plenty of sand. There's not a big rush out here. It looks like the city's actually bringing in some more sand just to make sure people have enough. I think we decided we are going to stay at the house tonight. We'll see how it goes. So it did finally start raining, but it's honestly not raining very intensely. It's honestly just like sprinkling. So we'll see what happens, see if it picks up. All right, so I just actually moved my car up to like a higher area in our neighborhood. Everybody kind of puts their cars in this one like big parking lot. It's just kind of a park in the middle of our neighborhood. It's a little bit higher, and I guess they're okay with people doing that. Now I'm riding my one wheel back to the house. And after this, my wife wants to go to TJ Maxx and return something, or I don't know. So it's kind of a normal day, honestly. Except there's a lot of water everywhere. There's a storm coming. Here you can kind of see, just kind of like water everywhere. And you know, in my neighborhood it is lower, I understand that. And you know, maybe we're being crazy staying in our house. I don't know, we feel pretty safe, honestly. I don't feel that worried about it. And who wants to go like stay at a hotel for nothing? I mean, the one time you go and your house gets like destroyed would feel worth it, but ooh, it's getting me wet. All right, just dropped off another one of our cars. Well, our only other car. We only have two. Back here at the same parking lot. It actually hasn't rained a whole lot. Right now it's 7:22 p.m. And what I thought was gonna be kind of constant rain through the afternoon and evening has been nothing at all. I gotta go back. My wife forgot something in her car. So anyway, not a lot of rain today. We'll just check the forecast again. They kind of readjusted it to say the rain is supposed to start at 8 tonight. Clouds have been moving fast across the sky. I like that. It's like they're moving like it's a time lapse, but it's just normal. I'm gonna head down to the bayou and see if the water is starting to get high. Give you a sneak peek of that. Actually doesn't look all that high, but we've got a few hours for it to get to its high point. This corner up here is the spot that's actually closest to my house. And it's actually the spot where it already like comes in the road pretty easily. In a moment like this, I question if any prep is needed. Like, it just seems like there's not even gonna be a storm, but I know from growing up in Oklahoma that the current weather doesn't necessarily show what's going to be happening in a few hours. And even like that same thing with like tornado kind of activity is, I think it follows along with hurricane type activity as well. All right, so it's 10:15 p.m. right now. It's raining pretty heavy, kind of normal Florida rain though for this time of year. And it seems like this storm has kind of broken up. So at, let's see what time this was, at 2:33 p.m. I got this alert, and everybody in the area kind of got this alert. It just changed it from a tropical storm to like a tropical storm warning to a hurricane warning. And that was because the winds picked up from 60 miles per hour to 70 miles per hour, which doesn't necessarily make it a hurricane, but it just changed the warning. It changed kind of the emergency status of it. But kind of since then, the storm has continued to not really take shape. Right now, it's kind of just going along the coast, and all these bands are hitting the area. Tampa's still going to get hit by all these bands, but it doesn't seem like the Tampa area is going to get hit by the eye of the storm. But still, the issue is tidal surges. And the high tide tonight is right around 12:30 a.m. and then tomorrow morning around 10:30 a.m. Those are really the times when, the storm could be completely past, but the tide could still surge a few feet. So that's really kind of what we're waiting for now. Of course, these bands could, knock some limbs loose or do any other kind of damage like that. It doesn't seem too intense right now. It might get more intense. I might be waking me up and I might be back out here giving you an update here in a few minutes, but we'll see. For now, I'm gonna try to get some sleep. So it's like 7 in the morning now. It rained a lot last night. Doesn't seem like the water came up that high here in my front yard. I like to kind of see here. The sidewalk's wet. None of this is wet. This sidewalk over here is really wet. But overall, really not too crazy. So it seems like still like the high tide, like 10:30 this morning, will still be the most intense one now that the storm has kind of passed. More like a surge, kind of after the storm kind of goes by. The water's still kind of in the system waiting for the high tide, that's kind of its chance to surge up into the bay, into the bayous, into all the retention systems, and we'll see what happens then. So not only was the tide not very high last night, my wife was apparently up at around midnight and said it wasn't even in our street, but then today the tide that we were kind of the most worried about around 10:30 today came into the street, but it honestly wasn't any higher than like a really high spring tide. This is great. This is a great relief. You never really know like how much these storms are going to hold together or break up, and it's obviously still going to impact the state quite a bit. There's still lives that were lost throughout the Caribbean. It's still a big natural disaster, but I wanted you guys to just kind of see what it looks like on the ground whenever these kind of things are happening in the midst of a flood zone in the Tampa area, and not even on the Bay Area, but on the Gulf area where, the water is just a little more accessible. If you have any questions about any of this, please comment down below, or if you're in the area, you experienced the same storm, comment down below, let us know how you prepared and kind of what you expected to happen. And each of these storms has to be handled differently. Expectations are different for each one. The path, the pattern, all those things are different for each one. Who knows how I will react to the next time, but I'll probably give you guys an update when that time comes along. Thanks for coming by. Hey, if this channel is adding value to you and you want to subscribe, please do. And again, if you have any real estate specific questions, I am a realtor in the state of Florida and would love to help you with any of those questions. Thanks for coming by.